Hello and welcome back to Chess Match, Learn Chess with the Rochester Chess Center. I'm guest instructor David Petty, and with me again are brothers Daniel and David Villani. And we've seen one game between them already. They're ready for a rematch. They've switched colors. Let's shake hands. Good luck, guys. And you may hit your brother's clock. All right, here they go. And last time, we saw them get into time trouble. So we're going to see if this is a short game or a long game. And I like the square that Daniel chose to put his bishop on. He hesitated for a moment and almost put the bishop on d6, but c5 is a better square. Oh, wait, that's an illegal move. Don't forget, knights always change colors when they move, so they can't actually capture diagonally. Keep going. Now, one thing that you can notice from what we just saw is what's called look with your eyes, not with your hands. So it seemed to me that Daniel thought about moving his bishop, but he grabbed it before he was really sure where he wanted to move it to. And then you could see him moving the bishop around, thinking it's very good in chess to do that thinking in your head and don't touch pieces till you know exactly where you want to put them. Because in a tournament game, it's touch move, and once you touch a piece, you have to move it. Okay, so white was up a pawn for a brief moment, but Daniel has won the pawn back. And something very interesting is happening here, which is that both e pawns are gone, so the e file where the kings live is wide open. Okay. Don't forget to hit your clock, guys. Okay. So we just had a successful attack on f7, the square of doom, the usual target. Yes, it is the square of doom. This is the square where many successful attacks happen early, but I think that it might have been a little bit better to take with the knight instead of the bishop. But let's see what happens from here. Check. Now that's an illegal move. That's an illegal move too. Okay. Yeah. Now the best move would have been for the knight to take the bishop. Before you run with your king, always look for a way to capture the checking piece. That would have been a huge difference in this game. It would have been an extra bishop for black instead of losing a queen. But it's not over yet. Black should keep bringing out all of his pieces and do what he can do. And look for ways to capture things. All right, they trade knights. And on every move, black should be looking for ways to capture things. Because he's down a queen, he's got to get back into the game by evening the material balance. I like that decision by white. He wasn't sure what to do, and he remembered the advice that you should castle. But unfortunately, both players were missing that there was a piece that could be captured for free. And it wasn't that one. That was a new piece that could be captured for free. Okay, the knight saves itself and at the same time does something sneaky. And an excellent move by David, saving the queen and also defending the bishop that had been hanging here on f7. That bishop had been up for grabs for a couple of moves. Okay, the knight moves, and we have a quick checkmate. Notice that the king can't take the queen because the bishop is defending it. And there's also nowhere to run. So what black needed to do, if we pause, this is checkmate. Did you guys agree? Yeah. If we just go back a few moves ago, right around when white castled, the best move for you, black, for you, Daniel, would have been to capture this bishop. because that bishop was taking away a lot of squares around your king. It's also a delicious bishop, and if you had the chance, capturing this bishop would have been good too. I think actually at the time you had a bishop here that was blocking you from doing that, but that would have been a very important move. Now for our tip of the day from the game that we just saw. In this position right here, White played a very interesting move. He jumped out with his bishop here to c4, and players with experience would know that this bishop and this knight are aiming for the square of doom, the weakest link. And in this position here, really there's only one move that Black should play, and that is, of course, to castle your king, because you get your king out of danger, and at the same time you bring your rook into the game. Now f7 is double defended, and if White takes, then Black is going to get the last laugh. Take, take, take. And that would have been a very good thing for Black to do. After all, Black's king never got castled and was checkmated on this very square just a few moves later. So don't forget to castle, especially when your king is under attack. That was the tip of the day.
Chess Match is sponsored by the Rochester Chess Center, which has been serving the Rochester chess community for over 24 years.
And welcome back to Chess Match. I am guest instructor David Petty, and with me are two advanced students from the Rochester area, Webster Kehoe and Connor Wagner. And today we're going to see another game between these two advanced students, this time with a 5-minute time control, a much faster game than we saw last time. So buckle your seatbelts. But we're not. And we're off. This opening is called the English opening because White's first move is with this c-pawn. And so far, a symmetrical situation. You can see both sides have played the exact same moves. This is called the symmetrical English. And the symmetry continues. Black faced with a tough decision. Does he play d6? Okay, they break the symmetry. And now we're back into a symmetrical situation. So generally, when positions are symmetrical, the side who moves first, White, has a slight advantage. And we're going to have to see if that is the case in this game, or whether Black will at some point vary his strategy and try something different. So what was the point of these pawn moves? With a3, White was hoping to play b4 and expand on the queen side, and that is why Black has played this strange move a5, putting a grip on that b4 square but giving up control of the b5 square. Maybe this knight will jump in there in the future. We'll have to see. Now, one thing that you can see about this position is that there aren't a lot of open lines. All 8 pawns are still on the board. There have been no trades so far, meaning that this position is somewhat closed and a little bit slow. In positions where you trade pawns, the position is much more active because there's lots of open lines for your pieces. You'll notice both players playing quite quickly. That is, of course, because of the 5-minute time control. So far, the time, very close. They both have about 4 minutes left. They've used 1 minute out of their 5. The knight comes back. I wasn't really sure why it was going to e8, but now it's back on f6. All right, the first trade of the game, and we have created an important imbalance. An imbalance in chess is something that's different on the two sides. Now, what's different? Well, Black has 2 bishops, whereas White has 2 knights. Now, bishops and knights are both worth approximately the same, but they are different pieces. Okay, more trades have happened, and things are quickly changing up. So one thing to say about this position is that black has what's called the bishop pair. This is an advanced concept, but black has two bishops versus the one bishop that white has. And black's bishop that is uncontested is this guy here on g7. That is the dark squared bishop, and black in the long run will control the dark squares of the board better because he has a dark squared bishop and white does not. And when you have the bishop pair, one strategy is to try to trade pawns and open lines, especially trading pawns on dark squares in this case, to make your bishop more powerful. Another imbalance in this position, as we're reaching something of an endgame, is that white has what's called a pawn majority on the queen side. There's two pawns over here. I'm going to pause for a second. There's two pawns over here on the queen side versus one, which means in the long run, white is going to make what's called a passed pawn on the queen side. And once you have a passed pawn, that means a pawn that can't be stopped by another pawn. It can try to run down and queen. Now, black has a pawn majority over here on the king side. And black's long-term plan would be to make a pass pawn over here in the center. But because it's 5-on-4 versus 2-on-1, white's usually a little bit faster because there's less pawns that he has to work with. All right, ready? Queen trade, very important in this position. The nature of the position just changed a lot without queens on the board. That decision was made instantly by our players, but it would be a big decision in a tournament game. White has successfully, you'll see, created this passed pawn. If he can get that pawn down to b7, this square right here, it'll be very strong. Notice that white has a rook behind the passed pawn. It's called having a rook behind the passed pawn, pushing it forward, pushing it towards the queening square. And Webster is doing a very smart thing. He's controlling the queening square. In fact, he's blockading the queening square with his rook. But once the pawn reaches b7, that's going to be a very sad rook indeed, with no scope forward at all. And this knight on c5 defending the pawn very well. So that's why Webster is trying to chase that knight away. Connor says, no, I like my knight. My knight is staying. And if you remember the last game these guys played in a previous week, we remember the tip of the day that time was that in the endgame you want to activate your king. That hasn't happened yet in this game, but I expect that soon the kings will join the fray. Now, the time almost identical, both players having 2 minutes left on the clock. And white goes for a breakthrough with his passed pawn. And Webster shakes his head because he doesn't want to trade that rook. Very powerful move that white just made. The entire goal of white in this position is to break through with this passed pawn on b6. That's what the endgame is all about, and that is what Connor has been showing us today. Create a passed pawn, push your passed pawn, queen your passed pawn. That's what the endgame is about. So Webster really only has two choices in this position. He could trade rooks or fall back with his rook, but both choices do not look too appealing. But that's what he's thinking about right now. He trades rooks. And now the pawn gets there, forces black to sacrifice his rook, and we go into an endgame where it's not even a rook for a pawn. Now it's just an extra rook. This should be very easy to win for white. In fact, if Connor was playing the world champion right now, he would be able to win this game. That's how big the advantage is. The only hope Webster has is to flag him, which means to win on time, but in fact he is down by 1 minute. The other hope would be a miracle stalemate. Stalemate, of course, being when you can make no legal moves and you're not in check, and that's a type of draw in chess. Okay, Webster resigns, that's correct. Good game, you guys. So now let's have our tip of the day. And this tip was actually demonstrated in the game by Connor, and that is that in the end game, there are 3 phases of a chess game: the opening, the beginning, the middle game, the middle, and the end game, the end, just like any good story. And in the end game, what you're trying to do is promote your pawns. The littlest chess piece, the pawn, becomes the hero, the most important guy. And what happened in this game is we had the same number of pawns, but if you look here on the board, there was what's called a majority over here on the queen side for Connor. And the reason he won this game is that he correctly used this majority to create a pass pawn. He pushed these pawns forward, they traded off, and then this pawn was left all alone running down the board with the rook behind him, pushing him to victory. That's what you want to do in the endgame. Trade a pass pawn, push it, queen it. And that's what earned Connor a victory in this game.
Hello, I'm Ken McBride, and this is one of the benefits of the day. In chess, we often learn the quality of perseverance. That means that if we get behind, we don't just quit or immediately make another mistake. We have to try and come back, look for other captures, look for ways to give our opponent some problems. But perseverance is a quality that is useful in life in many other things besides the game of chess.
My name is Ryan Horst, and I'd like to just demonstrate some of the benefits of chess as a high school math teacher, as well as a father of kids in the primary and elementary schools right now. I know there's a lot of changes going on, and I think chess is a great way to introduce kids to some of those new changes that are going on, and some of the ways as a parent you can help them, even if you don't know much at all about chess, but really get the kids to learn how to think. That's one of the major changes going all the way down to 3rd grade with the new testing and the new curriculum changes with both math and ELA. Kids are expected to start to think at a higher level, think multi-steps. And I think this is a very simple way to approach it, because one of the problems I know with especially younger kids is if you put a lot of pieces on the board and ask them to think 2 or 3 steps ahead, it can get overwhelming for a new chess player, young chess player, because they're just not ready yet for that. So this is a very simple game, and you can just start off by just taking a look. And the object of the game is for the white king to get to this side of the board. And the way to do that, if it's white's move first, you'll notice no matter what white does, black can always stop him. So white goes back and forth, and you'd play this game and you'd say, well, I can't win. And then you say, okay, well, it's black's to move first. And what you notice is if black moves, black has to give way. And this is called opposition. If he chooses to go this way, they can walk around him. So there's not much planning involved here, but that's the basics, and that's where you can start. But what you want to do is you want to get your son or daughter to ask them, say, okay, now let's move this back, and say, okay, now it's white's turn. Where can white move in order to win the opposition, so to speak? White's correct move would be here. And that's something you can let them do. You don't need to tell them what it is. Let them develop this. And this is key to the new curriculums, everything is going on across the country. So the idea is let them learn that this is the correct way, because then whatever way black moves, you can go around it. If white were to try to advance this way, black would stop it, and then no matter what happens, the pieces are stopped. And what you can do is to just kind of think more and more and more about a very simple game, is just back the pieces up all the way to here. And eventually you go from here and you say, okay, can white win the battle to here? The answer is yes, and I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out.
Hi, I'm Ken McBride, and this is the benefit of the day. One of the benefits that we have in chess is that we learn from our mistakes, and we find out about this. In one game, we might have made a mistake, or maybe not played the best move. But then in the next game, hopefully we'll have learned from that, and then we can see what we could do better.
All right. Again, welcome. My name is Ryan Horst. I'm trying to introduce some benefits of chess from a teacher's perspective. And I've talked before, and what I'd like to introduce is the idea behind planning. And again, with relation to the new English language arts exams and the math exams, one of the things that is key is that kids are supposed to be planning and doing lots and lots of planning in what they're doing. They're not supposed to just read a book anymore. They're supposed to take the book, plan out what they expect to happen, what they think will happen. And that's something, again, that is a very key component to chess. But very often as well in chess, it can get very overwhelming for young kids if you put lots of pieces up on the board. Some can handle it, but a lot of them really can't. So you can introduce these mini games. And there's lots of these games. You can look on your computer. You can go to web searches and find 2-move checkmates or 2-move this or 3-move that, which are good. But this is another one that I love because it requires the kids to think. And I think it's a very good example of using those thinking skills and developing those thinking skills through the game of chess. So if you look here across the board, what you'll notice is that the white pawns are going to try to go this way to become a queen. The black pawns are going to try to go this way. And if a pawn can get here, the pawn can become a queen. The problem that you have in this game for white is that the black king, even if white were moved first, the black king is close enough to the action that eventually he can come here, take all 3 pawns, move these down, and there's not much white can do about giving up a queen, maybe even 2 queens in the process. So there's a difficulty there. So the question that you want to pose to your son or daughter is to look at this position, because the truth is white wins from here. And you want to take a moment to look at this and set up the board in this position. It's a very simple position, and see if they can find a way to get white to win, because the only goal in this is to get the pawn here to become a queen, because a queen would be much more powerful than these. And again, how it relates, you're trying to get your son or daughter to think about it, make a plan, just like they would be having to do in school with the new test and the new testing. So what white can very simply do is push this pawn forward. And you can, again, let them go from there. If they can't play it on their own, you show them this is the first one and say, if you go from here, you can create the queen. Well, black now poses a problem. Black's king is too far away, and if he allows me to take this, 1 move later, I'm going to get the queen. So he has to capture in some way. So black will capture the pawn. Now what you do is, again, it's another kind of sneaky move. Maybe you leave this position on the board and ask your son or daughter, okay, now how can white win? Because white can now push this pawn. And what that does is it threatens again to take the pawn and go, so black must take this pawn back. And what that does is allow the pawn to walk through and become a queen. And again, what you're hoping from this position is that they can learn to think ahead, to plan, and understand that they are in trouble. But you know what? There's ways out of that, and it comes down to thinking and planning and using your head.
See, I left them over.
Here's the other two. Listen, Kevin, Tuesday.
Connor Wagner.
And how are you feeling about this match that's coming up? You're at board 1.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a good game. Yeah, I'm playing the first seed. I'm gonna attempt to play a really drawish opening, hoping I can get a draw. I'm obviously gonna go for a win, but he's a good opponent, so it should be a good game. Yeah, I hear he has his opening is his worst part of the game, so I'm gonna hope to get a strong advantage there and hopefully be able to pull out a win.
My name is David Petty. I'm one of the instructors here at the Rochester Chess Center.
And you're going to be playing at board 1 today, correct?
That's right, and what that means is that I'm the highest rated player in the tournament, although not by much. And I'm playing a very strong young up-and-comer. In fact, I've taught him over the last year a few times in summer camp. He's one of the very strongest kids in Rochester, and I'm actually a little bit nervous. Yeah, well, there's a saying, with youngsters to the end game, which means that young players tend to be really good at tactics, which is like forcing moves, lots of variations, and calculating, but they tend to be very bad at the end game. So one option when you're playing a younger person is to try to bring the game to an end game, and then you can try to win with your technique in the end game. But I'm not going to do that this game. I'm playing an exciting middle game, which is exactly where younger players are good. At least that's the plan. We'll see if he does what I think he's going to do. So.
Awesome. All right. Yeah.
This is the most common type of scary attack at the beginning of the game. Should I say it again? Okay.
Okay.
Take 3.
Ah.